Looks like we have just about everybody. 2, 3, 4, 5. And Barbara, also looks like the recording's on.
I just started the recording, so you're on the record whenever you're ready to start.
Great. Well, it is a minute after 1, so I think we can go ahead and get started. So I now call to order this meeting of the Assembly Rules Committee of the Whole. It is Thursday, February 10, 2022, and we are noticed from 1 to 3 p.m. Ms. Jones, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Suzanne LaFrance.
Here.
Christopher Constant. Jamie Allard. Forrest Dunbar.
Here.
Crystal Kennedy.
Here.
Cameron Perez Verdilla.
Here.
Pete Peterson.
Present.
Austin Quinn Davidson.
Here.
Felix Rivera.
Present.
John Weddleton.
Here.
Meg Zalatel. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, and I understand that Mr. Constant will be joining in a little bit, and I believe Ms. Allard is traveling. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining today. I hope that you've had a good week. The agenda is available online at muni.org, and if members of the public click on Assembly and at the top on Committees and scroll down to the Rules Committee, you will find the agenda. It's a pretty standard agenda, not really, I think, anything new. Hopefully we'll get through the discussion on the Assembly accomplishments and goals. Is there anything anyone wants to add to the agenda? All right, well, we will go ahead and get going, and I see that we've been joined by Mr. Constant. And I will start with just a brief report, a brief chair's report. And I will keep it short so we can focus our time on the discussion about goals and accomplishments. And first off, thanks to staff and to Assembly members for all the work on reapportionment. And I think that the town halls went well. I enjoyed attending the Eagle River one last week. So thanks to everyone for your work on that. And Claire, I know you've been putting in long hours and it's very much appreciated. And thanks also to the members who continue to work on the facilitated process on homelessness. We've got a work session scheduled tomorrow at, sorry, I'm just pulling it up here, 2:10 to 3:10 p.m. regarding the implementation of the Sullivan exit strategy, and maybe Chris and John and Meg will speak to it when we do our roundtable and go through the updates. Also want to mention too, we've talked before, and let me note for the record that we have been joined by Ms. Allard. Also want to go back to a conversation, an ongoing conversation we've had about Assembly Council resources and how Dean's plate is very full. The deputy council position is still, or has been advertised again and is posted. And as of a day or so ago, there were no applicants. So we continue to look at ways in which we can make that position appeal to folks. In the meantime, and I think Dean may touch on some of these things as well, I just want to remind members, if you have amendments, the sooner you can get those to Dean, the better, preferably before the meeting, before the Tuesday of the meeting, so that he has some time to get those done before we get to the chambers. Also want to mention too, as far as committees go, if committee chairs would go ahead and let Dean know if there are meetings where you would like to have him present, if there's something that is germane to Assembly Council or would benefit from having an Assembly Council there. That would be helpful so that, you know, if there's nothing where Dean is needed or expected to be needed in terms of the items on the agenda, then that will, you know, give him more time to focus on some of those other priorities. And then the last thing I'll say about that is, and I can put this in the chat and we will send this out as well, is it's really important to CC Rebecca when you are contacting Dean, because she helps to manage the workflows and the projects. And one way you can do that is to use the !MAS Assembly Council at anchorageact.gov, and that way it will go to both Dean and Rebecca. There's a second address that's MAS Assembly Council at anchorageact.gov, which also will deliver it to both of them. Okay, just a final couple notes here. The Alaska Municipal League Conference, Legislative Conference is next week, and Pete and Austin and Claire and I will be down there, and we can talk more about that later in the meeting. But I'll be flying down on Wednesday and attending some of those sessions, and we'll be meeting with legislators as well. Also want to note for folks that, as you know, first quarter budget revisions will be in April, and there are already work sessions on the calendar. Desiree's managing that process. I am trying to be judicious in scheduling work sessions, though I know that it's really helpful and important when there are more complicated items on our regular meeting agendas, if we can take them up in the more informal conversational work session setting. So I heard the feedback from members that we want to be mindful of the workload in scheduling work sessions. And so trying to find the right balance between providing those meetings for the opportunity to get into some of the stuff and then not having too many meetings on the calendar. And with that, I will turn to Claire for an update. Claire? I believe you may be muted. Judging from your body language, it looks like you may not be able to unmute. Your camera is working.
Wait, now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. It was doing that thing where it would just get stuck. I was saying you've all been keeping me very busy. I did a lot of work with reapportionment in the last month. The town halls all went great and the committee meetings were really productive. I'm always impressed. People give you a hard time for it, but you're all so flexible and efficient when you work together. So it's been really cool to see. I got the word out to a couple of groups who I thought might be interested in the Title 21 and 23 changes so that they can pay attention to that issue. I got our hot topics on the front of the website updated with some fresher issues. I am working with Cameron to do a little history on body cameras. And then getting ready to go to AML, scheduling some legislative visits. I think that's all I have for a report. I did have one question for you all. I am on the Assembly email list, so I get the mass emails from the public. And sometimes they ask basic questions that aren't political in nature that I can answer, such as some of the things I've replied all on some of the reapportionment emails. And I'm just not sure if I answer those, if you want me to reply all. I know you can't reply all, so I can't see if you've answered them. So I just don't know what a plan should be for how to respond to those. The ones that are more political in nature, I'll leave you to answer however you want. But every now and then we get a technical question that I can easily answer. I'm just not always sure how to proceed. Anyone have an opinion on that?
Thanks, Claire. I just want to note before we go through the queue that we were joined by Meg at 1:10. Austin, you had put a comment in the chat. Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. I appreciate that you do that. I often respond to people, but I know that members don't know that I'm responding, and so they might get 11 responses or 7 or whatever it is. So I think it's super helpful if you can just respond to that and reply all so that we all know that person has heard from someone.
Okay. And then I guess if any of you beat me to it, if you could CC me, if it's just a technical question of where do I find that recording or where's the agenda posted, if you get to it before I do, just CC me so I know not to worry about that one.
Thanks for bringing that up, Claire, and thanks, Austin. I see that Pete is typing. Pete, did you want to say anything?
Well, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I was thinking that sometimes people are sending emails. I'm trying to find this information. Where do I find this information? I used to be able to find it here. I can't find it there anymore, that type of question. So yeah, certainly if Claire sees those, she can steer them in the right direction. That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. And I agree too, Claire, especially sometimes we get logistical questions right before a meeting. And I know you've responded quickly to get folks the information so that they can attend or participate. So appreciate you raising this point.
Okay. And then I had one other thing. A couple of you had requested this, so I'm working on this hopefully soon. But a little info sheet on the alcohol tax that describes some of the history, some of the numbers, how the funding's gone, that you can use in future meetings. So I hope to work on that soon too. And that's all for me.
Can I just quickly say that sounds great? I would love to be able to share that out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Austin. I agree. Thank you, Claire, for working on that. All right. Well, thank you. And we will go ahead and move on to Barbara.
Hi, everyone. As you can see, I'm at the Election Center, and I always have 3 things to tell you. So it's this month, it's elections, elections, elections. And what we've been doing just in the last week and a half, we have approved the ballot design. So we've gotten all of the AOs that the Assembly approved, and all of the candidates that have filed for office that haven't withdrawn, and all of that information has gotten to our ballot designer. We'd had a number of edits on some of the ballots. So remember, they're in the substantially the same form as you approved on the AO. And we work with a review team that includes the municipal manager, the CFO, OMB, Muni Legal, and Dean Gates. And we made some edits to those, their commas and adding and the word municipality. And so they're not substantial, but it did take some time. We finished those. We checked to make sure that all of the precincts and districts are getting the right ballots. And we finalized those and we got them to our ballot design printer. And we also got the state voter file, the first state voter file from the state of Alaska. So there has been a lot going on down here, even though it's just the 4 of us working down here. We've gotten a lot done. We're working with the League of Women Voters to get the ballot review completed, and the OMB fact sheets are in progress. I just think that, there's lots going on, and I'm grateful to Jennifer and Desiree and the rest of the team up in the clerk's office for making sure everything keeps going up there. And that's it for me, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Barbara, and thank you for all that you're doing. I know it's a very busy time. Do members have any questions? Oh, Ms. Kennedy. Crystal.
Got it. Thank you. Barbara, I just wanted to know how hiring was going. I think it was even last week, Dennis Wheeler mentioned to somebody at Chugach Eagle River's open forum on the reapportionment that they needed, still needed election workers. So how's the hiring going? Thanks.
That is true. We are still looking for election workers. We had about 14 openings out of, I think we have around 60 or so election workers. And Jamie Heinz and Amy Solberg are doing interviews and hiring election workers every day. But we asked HR to leave the posting open. So it's an open continuous posting on the website. You can find it on the elections webpage. If you're looking, if you know anyone that's looking, you know, the issue that we're finding is that people, they really want to work part-time, or so we're looking for people for, you know, 2 full weeks to work at our vote centers, or it's actually about 10 days, but with training, it's about 2 weeks. So we're just finding people aren't quite willing to commit to that length of time. So, or, you know, our envelope openers start, they work about 4 weeks. So we're just not finding people that want to quite work that long. So if you know anybody, send them to our website, or they can email elections@anchorageak.gov and we'll talk to them. Thank you, Ms. Kennedy.
Yeah, thank you. That's good info to know and pass on. Thanks.
Thank you, Crystal. Do any other members have questions? Thanks, Barbara, for the update and all your hard work. Let's see, okay, actually, Dean, did you want to add anything?
Oh, thank you. I would just mention that the deputy municipal council position that you mentioned was advertised. I think that actually the posting closes today. But I had talked to the law department and a couple other attorneys, and it's generally very difficult to get applicants in government attorney positions these days, just because of how the job market is. And so although it closes today, yeah, maybe I will extend the period.
Thanks for that update, Dean. It looks like someone is typing in the chat. Is that you, Felix? Do you have a? Oh, okay. Sorry, side thing on a subsequent item on the agenda. We'll go ahead then and move on to assembly member discussion on pending business and updates from committees. And if you want to do it all in one shebang, that's fine. Otherwise, we could start with individual updates and come back to any committee things, but you're welcome to combine it. So I will just go through the participant list here. Jamie, is there anything you want to share?
No, not today. Thank you, Suzanne. And I apologize, but I have a meeting in about 9 minutes, so I'm going to hop off. Thank you very much, though.
Understood. Thanks, Jamie. Chris?
Thank you. With the reapportionment committee, you know, we had a long meeting yesterday and we have another one coming up on Monday from 9 till noon. And I had some discussions with the contractor today, and we'll have a kind of an interim proposal for how members or the administration can submit updated maps for their that are their right to do at the beginning of that meeting. And then we'll proceed down the road of reviewing anything additional and then taking the next steps. So it's a consequential meeting and folks are recommended to be there.
Thanks, Chris. Forrest?
Thank you, Suzanne. I don't think I have any individual pieces of legislation coming forward other than I think the rolled curb thing is coming up, which we'll have a work session on tomorrow. On the budget committee, I think this month will likely be a fairly standard meeting. And then I would expect the first quarter budget revision discussion to ramp up next month. That's all.
Thanks, Forrest. Crystal?
Thanks, Suzanne. I don't really have anything legislatively that I'm working on, but I will, on a personal note, just let you know that I'm going out of town Monday for a little over 2 weeks, or is it a little under 2 weeks? Anyway, I'll be back on March the 3rd, so I'll keep in touch as best I can. And then the week after that, I'm having shoulder surgery. And once again, keep connected as best I can. But anyway, just the next probably 3 to 4 weeks for me is going to be a little full of other outside things other than assembly work. So anyway, just to let you know. And again, I'm going to be available on my cell phone or, checking emails and calling in when I can. So thanks.
Thanks for the update, Crystal, and let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
Thanks.
Cameron?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, a few things. Let's see. So next week on, I'll get my days correct here. Hold on, let me make sure I got the right day here. So next week I'll get we have a work session on the body cam policy, and I've been meeting with lots of folks about that. Met with Amy Demboski and Chief Curl and Patrick Burke today, and just trying to get sort of all of the pieces in place for that. So that is going to be a 2-hour meeting, and that will involve, let's see, make sure I got the right date here. The 17th, right? No, 18th. Where is it? 18th. Is that right? Yeah, 18th from 1 to 3. So that will involve a presentation from the Department of Law on the sort of legal basis for the policy as it stands now. It'll have APD will do a presentation on sort of what this policy is going to look like. As Claire mentioned, I'm working with her on the timeline and a background of how we got to where we are, the different steps that were taken and that sort of thing, all the work that was done. And then a timeline about moving forward. And the hope is that after this meeting, APD will then, move forward, order the equipment, begin the start planning the training, and they'll also have to go to the union and begin that process. And I spoke to the union as well, and I think it's pretty clear that they anticipate that being a longer process, potentially 6 to 9 months. And so we want to make sure we share all of that and give a realistic timeline to folks. But it feels like that there's a need to have this meeting and really get some more information out on the table and to have more discussion about it. I can talk more about this, but there are people still who are concerned about the policy as is. But we are sort of working towards the idea that it is what it is for now, and that we are going to continue to work to review it, and there'll be opportunities down the road to change it. So that I'll just leave it at that and answer any questions about that. Another item is that the Vaccine Advisory Health Committee, that was a committee for the health department. That committee has been has been ended by the health department, and that was a really dynamic group of community leaders who had been working very hard on equity issues related to the vaccine, and also just really getting communities the support and the access that they really need around the vaccine and COVID and resources and that sort of thing. And so we have done some work recently to transition that group of people into a new group, which at this point, the working name is the Community Health Advisory Committee, and that they are an advisory committee to the Health Policy Committee. And Meg's aide has agreed to help with staffing some of it, and Ag Newbeck is going to be involved with it as well. So they are going to meet on the 17th from 4 to 6, and they're going to look at a new version of their charter. They're going to talk about meeting dates. They're going to talk about what the purpose and role of this committee could be, should be. Our proposal is going to be 3 things that they focus on. One is that continuing to be involved in community voices around COVID and working on access and that sort of thing. Second is just sort of community health policy in general, and making sure that there's community involvement and voice in those kinds of priorities. And the third is to become more up to speed on Crisis Now and learn more about it, and then potentially become more of a community advisory group around that in some way. So that's still very much in the works, but there is a meeting from 4 to 6. And so all members are invited to come and to participate in that. I think that's probably good for now. I'm working on a variety of other things, but those are 2 pieces I wanted to make sure to share. Thanks.
Thanks, Cameron. And John has a question.
Yeah, Cameron, thanks. On this committee, what my perception is that the health department has been super busy and not been able to participate in the health committee's meetings. So who's staffing this new committee? I mean, do they have the capacity to do that, the health committee, or is this something that's actually going to be under the assembly?
So we've had conversations with Barbara and the clerk's office, and it's and so at this point, the clerk's office has said that it's going to be a challenge, but they are willing to help with staffing this committee, and Meg has offered to have some hours from her aide to help to staff it. And so her aide has been working with the clerk's office to learn teams and to learn the system that they go through in terms of agendas and files and all of that. And so the plan at this point is that it's going to be kind of a co-support from the clerk's office and from Meg's aide. My sense is that this committee will, once we get it up to speed, will not require a great deal of support, but they will need an agenda and a team's time and those kinds of things. So I think that the short answer to your question is that I've been talking to Suzanne and others about that this committee is being supported by the assembly, and that it's not an official committee of the assembly. It is a community group. I'm not sure that.
Okay, thanks. So no, it does. I think it's fine. I get community involved, particularly if you have a great body of volunteers who want to continue. It just, we have kind of our official committees that are appointed, and you can see them on board and their terms and so on. But it sounds like you're going to be working on that at the first meeting. So
yeah, and my assumption, we'll see where this goes, but my assumption is that, there's a list of 48 people that are on this committee, and
wow.
it's been very active. If you look at this list of people, it's a pretty amazing group of community leaders that represent so many sectors and parts and perspectives in our community. It was such a valuable group of people that we couldn't disband them. It was pretty awesome, and it is pretty awesome. So my sense is that it's not going to be like a commission or an official committee. It'll be a community committee, but we're just going to try to support it. And I think they are going to be a really valuable resource for us to bring health issues too, and really have access to a lot of community experience and voice. There are many organizations represented on it, so I think it's really going to be an incredible resource for the assembly over the next year or two.
Yeah, 48 people, that's a whole different animal. So yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. And thanks, Cameron, for your work in keeping this group together. And I think that was a really great solution, Meg, to volunteer aid to support the group. And also thanks to the clerk's team, Barbara, for providing training and that support to make this work. So appreciate that. Cameron, did you have anything else?
No, I think I've taken up enough time. Thanks, so.
Thanks, Cameron. Pete?
Thanks, Suzanne. Well, Barbara did an election update, and the only thing I was going to add to that is our newest best practice is track your ballot this year. And so that might be something that members could mention during some of their community council reports, promoting that so people, can find out about it. I was interviewed and I was on the news the other day, so some people will know about it from that. But it's the newest toy in our ballot, our voting toolbox, so to speak, and so I think it's something that could go a long way towards making people feel more comfortable with vote by mail if they're able to track their own ballot. Next week, busy week we got the Reapportionment Committee on Monday and our meeting on Tuesday, and then I'm in Juneau for the AML convention the rest of the week. So lots going on for me next week. Thanks.
Thanks, Pete. Austin?
Thanks, Suzanne. A little bit of a repeat of what other people had mentioned. I think Pete and Claire and I talked a little bit yesterday about AML, and Suzanne, we've been talking too, but what we want to do down there, how to really work with the administration to pair the message we're sending about the need for the port funding and any other needs that we have. So we have a meeting or two set up, and Claire's been a great help on that, and that's next week. Reapportionment obviously continues to next Monday. And then other than that, I think Forrest and I have just been talking about and looking toward 1Q, as Suzanne and Forrest both mentioned. So that's it for me.
Thanks, Austin. Felix?
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne. So a few things. First is there's going to be a meeting of the Municipal Audit Committee on February 22nd, and we have two topics on the agenda. First is BDO. They are going to give us an update on how things are going with the 2021 annual financial report. So they've already started their work on that. As members will remember, we usually get that report in June, except for the last 2 or 3 years when we've gotten it several months later, whether it's because of COVID or earthquake or FEMA reimbursements. There's always been something the last few years that has gotten that report to us late. So looking forward to that. The other item is going to be on PBR's performance value results. And I know there have been some assembly members really interested in this topic. And so there was an internal audit that came out on PBR's recently. So we'll be delving into that. And one of the discussions we're probably going to have in this committee is whether PBR's sort of is a standing item, i.e. it has its home in the Municipal Audit Committee. I think it may be a good place for it. So that'll be something I introduce at that committee to see if that's what we want to do. Then On February 16th, there's going to be a Housing and Homelessness Committee. We're going to be delving into a short presentation on housing, and I'm looking forward to that. I think it's not going to be, I think, a hugely broad type of presentation, but I think it'll be a good one to get the committee moving in on that part of our committee's namesake. And then I think we'll also have a good discussion on winter abatements. Folks have likely seen in the media recently some interest on that topic. Other than that, I have a few resolutions that'll be coming forward either on the addendum or at the March 1st meeting on the regular agenda. So look forward to those. And then Meg and I think similar to Pete, Suzanne, and Austin, Meg and I are taking a trip to Juneau next. The plan is our trip is going to be next week, I believe, on the 24th. So looking forward to that as well. And we'll likely be doing many of the similar things that Meg, Austin, and Suzanne will be. Or excuse me, Pete, Austin, and Suzanne will be. That's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Felix. John?
Yeah, thanks. I will not be going to Juneau, just so you know. The homeless update, let me go through mine first. I'm sorry, is Chris here? Chris Constant, is he was here. Okay, so maybe we can team up on that. Would that work okay, Suzanne?
I'm here.
Sure. Yep, he's here.
Okay, so I'll go through some things here. We have the ADU tax break ordinance coming up on Tuesday, and my understanding is Meg is working on an S version and it may not be ready by Tuesday. So my hope is that we can do the public hearing, postpone that for a couple of weeks, and then look at her S version at the Community Economic Development Committee the Thursday before that meeting. So just kind of put that in front of you. I'm continuing to work on the infrastructure bill stuff, which I suppose a lot of us are. There was a while where there was a complete dearth of information. Now it seems like every single person on the planet is having some kind of hours-long meeting on it, and it's hard to get to any of them. But I'm tracking, AMAT's use of those funds, and then working on hillside uses and how to get it so that that disparate group of neighborhoods and service areas and so on would be able to use it. And we've contacted all the road service areas and gotten ideas on what they need done, and they're working with the state legislators to get it into CAPSIS, so it's in the state system. And then there's about 40% of the roads on the hillside are not in any formal government connected road service area, but informal road service areas. And those are all tax district 2. So I have a mailing list of those. They're hard to figure out who runs those. So I'm planning on doing a mailing to them, and probably not all because it's about 2,500 addresses. But basically the question would be, who runs your road service area and what are your needs? And just try to get a list for probably the infrastructure bill, but even a broader knowledge of what's going on in those areas. I am continuing kind of have on the back burner looking at the assessors' routines, and I don't want to bug them now because I know they're really busy this time of year. And they're also developing, installing that new mass appraisal system, which I've looked at what other cities do with that. And there's a huge amount of data, very easy to get to if we choose to put that out there, and I hope we will. So I've kind of parked that for a while until we get that new CAM assistant going. We are seeing, obviously, loads of stuff for Title 21 and Title 23 on Tuesday's agendas, and we'll have a bunch of amendments proposed for those that are coming from a number of sources, but largely from feedback at our work sessions. Ron Thompson and Adam Trombley put together some amendments, and we went over those this morning at the Community Economic Development Committee. The lots of community land trust fees and rules for markets, they're still working on those, but I hope to have those at the next Community Economic Development Committee meeting and see where we are in those. On AMATs, I've been talking for long and hard about new scoring for the TIP. That was done in December, yay. We have the new MTP is moving along briskly in its 3-year mode. But we're not really doing much with the long-range transportation plan that we're somewhat committed to doing. It's just kind of a time constraint. And then I was tasked with working with Native Village of Eklutna and the assessor on their property taxes. If you recall, they were not taxed on some buildings and now they are. And assessor said we'd be glad to look, but we need to know which buildings they're talking about. And I haven't heard back from the Native Village. So those are just a few tidbits. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Meg.
Hello, everyone. So just a few items. I've been working on Title 21 and Title 23 amendments since that's up and coming. And then the S version on the ADU ordinance. Unfortunately, can't get it in for the addendum because I'm trying to get some information to see whether or not a statement of economic effects is going to be required or not. So as soon as that information gets done, hopefully it won't be too far of a requested postponement, and then an opportunity to run it back through CEDC. Otherwise, just really closely tracking the continued development of Crisis Now as the closer and closer to possibly looking at crisis stabilization centers coming online. Very interested in how that's going to intersect potentially with the mobile crisis team. Other than that, that's about it. I am finally well after 3 weeks, so I am back. So thanks for the patience and accommodating all that telephonic participation while I was ill. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg. Glad you're better. Okay, I think we can go ahead then and move on to the next item on the agenda. Update on facilitated collaborative process between administration and legislative drafting group. And I know, John, you had mentioned tag teaming with Chris. So I'm not sure which one of you would like to go first.
You know, gosh, Meg's here, so Meg gonna go first. We do have a report, and I don't know if it got sent out to everybody because I'm looking at an email that said here is a draft status report, which I think is intended to go out to you, but this has a date of February 28th, so it might be a little late. And so, Chris or Meg, did this go out? What was our?
You mean January 28th?
Oh, it is 1/28. Yeah, that's what I have. We must have something newer.
No.
Oh, no, yeah, January. I'm so Jan. We're in February. Yeah, it's 1/28. Is that? So I don't know if this went out to members, but you know, it's the one that has the nice graphics on it that show kind of timelines, and then the one Meg did that shows the pieces we're doing as part of the larger, you know, single adult sheltering, you know, kind of system.
Yeah, John, she did send it out. Belinda sent it out on the 1st.
Oh, she did. Okay, excellent. So I hopefully you all got that, and it's pretty nice. I think you know, Meg, Coalition and Homelessness put together some of these graphics that show, you know, what the system looks like, and also, you know, what other things are going on. So we've got, which you've heard about, buying the sockeye, buying the Barrett Inn for workforce housing, you know, doing a navigation center for 200 beds, and then the Midtown substance abuse thing with Salvation Army, and then some special needs population that we don't really have a place for, but it's still, you know, still kind of there, and we know that we need to do something. But it also shows, you know, Brother Francis can have 75 beds now, possibly more. Gospel Rescue Missions at 43, and it can go up over 100. Salvation Army has McKinley House with 15 women. Salvation Army may open another booth house. It's still somewhat tentative. Downtown Hope Center is expanding. So I think there are 55 now, Meg, and possibly 30 or 40 more with a new addition. And then Clitheroe Center is, Salvation Army has some money, hopefully, for that. I talked to them just a couple of days ago, and they're frustrated because there is money allocated to them with the state, but they're having a really hard time actually getting it. And then we've got landlord housing partnership for up to 100 units. And then I don't know what CE stands for, Meg, resolved another 50 clients. So anyway, what we've been talking about is components to get out of mass care, but there's a whole lot of other stuff out there that's going on with increased capacity from other kind of the more traditional groups. So that's pretty good. On the timeline, we're hearing varying things. We have kind of been shooting, get out of the Sullivan by June, which could be very optimistic, looking at what we're dealing with. The new low barrier navigation shelter, for 200. It took 2 months to get the RFP out. So to think we could build it as fast as the end of June would be, and we don't even know quite what it is because we haven't gotten the responses to the RFP yet. So that is probably optimistic, though I've also heard that there is a hopeful goal of having a new single adult shelter navigation center ready by mid-May, which would be pretty exciting, but very, very challenging. And we've all seen the funding because it's all come through us, or at least our side of it, but we've got quite a bit that came from other groups, and we've got $5.5 million from Widener, Rasmussen, Chugach, Alaska, Chalista, Providence. Doyon has committed to kind of outfitting $250,000 for the sockeye. There's so a lot of money coming from other sources. That is really what we want to do. I think the intent was always to make this a broad community partnership with the city having a real serious stake in it. And I think that's some highlights on this. It's a pretty long report, so we really we're hoping to update. We've moved a lot, and we want word out. And I'll tell you one thing: talking to people in the community, I am hearing you're doing nothing about homelessness. We heard a lot about it in the summer, now nothing. And so the word really needs to get out that we are really doing something here. Claire, thanks.
And I would jump in just to add that that last point. We had that letter to the editor from a former municipal employee who decided to take the opportunity to make a bad message about everything that's going on, and it's just inaccurate. So we do have a duty to figure out how to get this out better. And Meg, on this graphic that's up, it dawns on me, we might want to add at some point, we meaning you, I hate to ask that, but maybe in like a yellow box, the surge capacity available in the system at some point. And so it dawns on me, we might want to build a separate view for that part of it, which might help to alleviate some concerns about where one might become too large, too small, whatever. But that's not, so we can talk about that later. Just dawned on me seeing it now. So the work is ongoing.
And Chris, Claire has her hand up actually, and then Felix is in the queue, but I think Claire, did you want to respond?
Oh, I didn't need to interrupt Chris, but I was just saying that I'd love to work on promotion for this. And I really like that most recent report with all those charts that I'm thinking about how to get that out, at least up on the website, and would love to talk more offline about how to get this out further.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. That'll be very helpful.
And that report from Belinda is what's on the screen, and that was the one that was sent, or it's dated January 31st. I think it was sent that date as well. Is that right, Chris?
My email shows it was emailed on 2/1.
Or 2/1. Okay, February 1. Felix?
Yeah, thanks. So a few things. First, I will start with a question on the update. So have we moved forward at all with some of the due diligence work that's happening in the Barrett, or are we still in that process?
My understanding is that is still in the due diligence process. But work has been done. I mean, they certainly have looked at it thoroughly. We've heard that they have.
Okay.
I would concur that the due diligence is ongoing, and with any old building, you answer one question, you might end up with 2 new questions. And so there are some issues, but I continue to hear that there are some opportunities for that project to continue, and it's getting closer. And I also was on a tour with some members of the Rasmussen group on a different building in conversation about how to make additional housing happen. And so while those projects are happening, there are even others that are emerging.
Okay, great. Glad to hear that there are multiple plans moving forward. I guess second point is, So yeah, I really appreciated that update. I think it was one of the best ones, and I've been presenting it at a lot of community councils, and I think they have appreciated it. Are we still expecting to get weekly updates from the facilitated group, or is it going to be on a less frequent basis now that things are sort of moving, not necessarily more slowly, but differently?
So I'll jump in there and we're going to report every time we meet. So it's not weekly at this point. We've taken a few weeks off, give people a chance to get some work done and take a break and recalibrate. And so as we meet, there will be outcomes from each meeting, which are formally our talking points, which will then be the reports to the assembly. So as every time something develops at that working group, you will have a report within days.
Okay, great. Good to know. Then I guess last point is, a lot of the documents regarding the facilitated process are on the Assembly's Committee on Housing and Homelessness. I will say it is somewhat difficult to understand what each of the documents are. So Claire, what I might do is I might just find a way to sort of refresh the way that those documents are presented on the Housing and Homelessness Committee page. And then on the hot topics on the Assembly's homepage, I might just link to that so folks can just go there from the homepage rather than have to find their way to the Assembly page. Thanks.
Thanks, Felix. Meg?
Thank you. I just want to note for the record, I'm not here, not going to speak about this because my involvement is in a different capacity and it's not appropriate for me to weigh in. So thanks.
Thank you, Meg. And I see that Claire put something in the chat. Claire, do you want to speak to your comment?
Yeah, I just told Felix that that's a great idea and I'll look into that.
Thanks, Claire. And I want to mention again, too, that tomorrow there's a work session scheduled regarding implementation of the Sullivan exit strategy, and that's 2:10 to 3:10 p.m. via Teams. Anything else?
Suzanne, sorry, it's John. Sorry, should have
Go ahead,
asked me in
John.
the queue. So that meeting tomorrow, who's running that, and what's the goal?
Who would like to speak to that? Either Chris or Meg?
So I don't know about that one. It's somehow not even on my calendar, and I have a conflicting appointment at that time.
The coalition will be presenting to the body.
And that is my understanding. Okay, thank you, Meg, for confirming that.
Good,
John,
thank you.
did you have anything else?
No, that's fine, thanks.
Thanks. Okay, moving on to the next item then, if there are no other comments or questions on the facilitated collaborative process. Chris, you already had given an update on the reapportionment committee. Is there anything else to add or address now?
I don't think there is. I mean, really, it's just a work in progress. There's a possibility that the timeline slip a little bit. We did build in a 2-week margin from March 1st to March 15th, so we're still, I think, in that window. We may again see Mr. Welleton's map revived Monday, and also the one from the administration. We will then narrow down from there into further conversations and then make a decision on how to proceed. So still a work in progress.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, I guess we will go ahead now and move on to item C under new business. Draft 2021 Assembly Progress Report and 2021 Assembly Accomplishments / 2022 Assembly Goals. And I will turn it over to Felix and Claire.
Great, thanks, Suzanne. Claire, can you go ahead and pull up the document?
I was just realizing I don't have screen share capability. Barbara, can you give that to me? I have the document ready. Okay.
So just as a reminder for folks, so in the January Rules Committee meeting, we spent some time going over the 2021 progress report, and folks had some edits and additions and changes to that report. So thank you. I think Claire incorporated those, and folks, I think she sent that out yesterday or the day before. So hopefully folks, if you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, please take a look at it at some point before it gets on an agenda for approval by the body. So that's one thing that we did in January. And then the second thing is we started going through the 2022 goals. And so I think today the objective is to finish going through the goals. We went through two of the goals last time. We went through economic development and public safety. So we're going to go through the last four today: housing and homelessness, communications, quality of life, and infrastructure. And then the goal is to make whatever changes we would like to these. And then after we're done, we'll also go through and see if there are any sort of priority areas that folks want. As you see the way that Claire has outlined the document, there's priorities and then there's 2022 goals. And just so to give you guys a sense, I only heard one priority talked about the last time we met in January, and that was regarding the keeping track of FEMA reimbursement in R10 and R2. So that is something that I heard that could possibly sort of step up as a priority. So just getting you thinking, any sort of big overarching things that are we really want to focus on this year, those should rise up to that. But we'll go through priorities after we're done going through our goals. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, unless there are any questions. I'll just pause for a second. Okay. All right, so then let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with homelessness. And I'm actually, so if we can zoom in just like we did last time. And I know this is difficult because it's a lot of words, but is there an opportunity to do housing and homelessness? Or I don't know if that's going to fit in there.
It would be really small, but I could do that.
All right, yeah, if there's some way to do it, because I know, especially with at least what I'm hoping to achieve in the committee this year is a big focus on housing. And so I would want to make sure that that's being communicated to the public.
Because a lot of those goals aren't for homeless people. They're for people who already have housing and need better housing.
Right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just pause here. And actually, could you just zoom in just a little bit more? I can see it well, but I don't know if others can. Thanks. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and pause a second. Folks, give you a second to read that and then see if there's any changes you want to make to the goals or additions. All right, I'll start with you, Crystal.
Thanks, Felix. I was just looking at that phrase under the first bulleted statement there under homelessness. It says, bring the community along in support of. And it almost sounds a little manipulative. So I'm wondering if we can change that to something that basically just, I understand the outreach and communications part, but maybe it should be something more along the lines of promote the support of the plan. Something about bringing the community along just makes it sound a little bit like we're just kind of trying to gain support without maybe even considering that there's going to be some that don't support it, I suppose. But anyway, I don't know. I just had a little bit of problem with that language and what it might mean to somebody that thinks it's being a little manipulative. So that's my thought anyway.
That makes sense. I could rewrite it as promote community engagement with the plan.
Yeah, and actually,
Yeah.
Claire, so what I'm doing is I'm doing edits on it, and
Oh, gotcha.
so yeah, so what I have done, and then I'll share edits after we're done going through this exercise, so folks can take a look and see if it fits what your intention is.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay. And actually, that brings up one question I had. So I'm assuming the housing and homelessness plan that you're talking about in here is the anchored home plan. Is that a correct assumption?
I believe so. Like I said, these were given to me by others, so I just kind of wrote down what I heard, but that must be what was referenced.
Okay. Then I always like being specific in my words so that they
Yeah.
aren't manipulated, like Crystal said. So I'm gonna go ahead and just change that to the anchored home plan. And if we need to reference it, which is our yada yada yada, we can do that. Okay, Chris, I mean not Chris, John, you unmuted. Did you want to add something?
Oh, I'm on two computers, so I could see this really big because I'm on my phone. So I think, but there's no sound comes off my desktop. So I may be unmuted on that one. But since you called on me, we might double check with Meg. Anchored home expired, so they may call it something different. So that might be something to ponder. Thanks.
That's true. I thought we were working on an update for that, but Meg, do you feel comfortable weighing in on that?
Nope, sorry. If you
Sure.
want to get in contact offline at the appropriate way, I'd be happy to get you a response.
Okay, thanks. All right, any other thoughts on this one before we move on?
Yeah, Weddleton has another one here.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I think we discussed this before, but continue to fulfill the goals of the housing and homelessness plan. So if we call it anchored home, we had certain roles in there. So it might be continue to fill municipal goals because it was several pillars and I think we owned one. It's my understanding. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think you're correct that we own one of the pillars, but I think it's safe to say that the municipality plays a role in many of the pillars, whether it's just a simple partnership role or a regulatory role. So, I don't know exactly, like I don't want to wordsmith this too much that it's a whole page of trying to be totally accurate with our wording. But I also don't want to give up the municipality's responsibility of working in all of the different areas.
Yeah, you could continue to fulfill municipal role in the anchored home. And to the extent, I guess you're right, it's not really that one pillar we were kind of focused on, but you're right, we touch every pillar. So that kind of leaves it open. But I don't want people to think, because people do think that we are the entity in charge of dealing with homeless, when the reality is vastly, it's not the municipality historically, and even now with our kind of newfound commitment to it. So just, I don't want to mislead people.
I don't know if we're going to be able to solve that problem in this paragraph, but I'm just going to make a note of see if there's any better wording that we can do so that it's not misleading to people.
Something to live by in all times. Thanks.
Yeah. All right, I'm not seeing anyone else. Okay, so then moving on to communications. I'll go ahead, pause. Folks, give a chance to read that and get in the queue if you have any thoughts.
Do we say election boundaries or assembly district boundaries or something? Municipal reapportionment?
I mean, I know what that means, but you're saying other people may not know what that means?
Yeah, I don't think of it as election boundaries. I think we're setting assembly district boundaries, which might be the same thing, but in my head, that's what I'm thinking of. An election. You know, people are very confused already between local elections, state elections. You know, it's. I don't know.
agree with John. For what it's worth, I think it'd be better to say district boundaries.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Or how about actually using the word assembly district boundaries? Because I think John's right about the clarification.
It's gonna pop it to another line. That's why I was thinking you could just sub out, but we'll leave that to Felix and Claire.
Could get rid of
We could
municipal.
take out the word. Exactly. Good job.
Okay.
Maybe assembly boundaries.
Oh, yeah, good idea.
All right. Any other thoughts on this piece? May, did you want to weigh in?
I'm just thinking about it as a whole. You've got two different election items and they're kind of separated. So I was just thinking more about the ordering. So you talk about reapportionment, you talk about the code review, and then you kind of talk about communications in the more traditional form. So I would maybe reorder them to put like with like.
Cameron?
Hold on a second. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So my question, and it's maybe it's true for all of these, but this one, there's these are the goals. I'm just trying to think about how I want to say this. You know, I think that this is maybe a broader goal that encompasses a few of these, but one of the goals seems like that, you know, we just need to communicate better. And so I think that the issue that I have is that, you know, there is seems like such a demand for people to be more informed about what's happening with the assembly and with the you know, all of that. And so I'm just, you know, broadly speaking, I think that just, there needs to be more of that. And the other piece, I guess, is you know, these avenues that we have, the community councils and the website and the hot topics. And I'm curious if there are other modes or ways to get the message out about what's going on. And so I'm feeling like we continue to use very you know, sort of social media, but if there are you know, if there are creative ways that we can do it better, that's all I have. And so I'm not necessarily seeing that in there. And there's just I guess a need that I have to invest more into that work because it seems to be more important than ever. So that's what I got. I'm not sure. I can think about some language around that, but I just want to share that.
Thanks, Cameron. So the way that I think about that is you're right that it doesn't necessarily fit in here as a goal, but I think what you have stated fits fairly well into sort of what we are calling on this document priorities. And so I've highlighted this as something to talk about once we get to the priorities section. And I think the way Claire designed this document, there are like 3 or 4 priorities, and maybe I saw that wrong. Yeah, thanks for that addition. That's helpful. And
I'm
we'll go
thinking the
back.
same thing. Good idea.
Okay, so seeing no one else, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one, quality of life. Give you all a second to read.
Felix, I have a couple thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, Austin.
Thanks. Maybe this is too late. Maybe we've already talked about this, but it seems, oh, maybe parks are in infrastructure. It seems like we should be mentioning parks, like traffic calming, permits, enjoyment of parks or something like that feels like a big part. The parks and trails feels like a big part of the quality of life in Anchorage, at least in my circle. And then the last one, maybe Crystal can speak to this, but I don't know that, I certainly don't have a goal to establish a hospital in Eagle River. That seems a little out of the realm of the assembly. So I'm wondering, not to mention probably unlikely from a fiscal perspective, but I don't really know anything about that, but I guess I wouldn't say that's an assembly goal, but maybe Crystal can weigh in.
Thanks. Before I turn it over to Crystal, it's funny, I don't know if you remember, but you brought up that exact same point last month, Austin. And so the way that Claire has designed this document is she sort of split up infrastructure and quality of life. And so a lot of the parks and roads and trails kind of stuff Claire put into infrastructure. So we're going to go through that next after quality of life.
Okay, so I have a bad memory, but at least I'm consistent.
And I could combine them too, but it just seemed like I'd originally put them all together and then took them apart. And I was going back and forth, and this is where I ended up.
Yeah, I think it's okay. But maybe Crystal can talk a little bit about the hospital piece.
Yes.
That was something I noticed when we first reviewed this, was that there were a lot of really general things that felt, citywide. And then there were a number of Eagle River things. So it was great that people from Eagle River weighed in, but I also felt like I didn't really identify with those, but there may be things that, Crystal doesn't identify with either. So it's not that we can't include it. It just feels a little out of place to me.
Thanks. Crystal, you want to talk about that?
Sure, thanks. Well, I think, there's always been the problem that it seems like the majority of the assembly views everything from what's considered a citywide perspective, not a municipal-wide perspective. And that's when places like Girdwood or Eagle River get kind of left out of the picture because we're not part of the city. So, but we are part of the municipality. So I guess, that kind of begs the question of, what are the goals here? Are they meant to be citywide things, or are they meant to be municipal wide? And if they're meant to be municipal wide, you're going to want to be a little bit more specific sometimes in exactly what area of the municipality you're trying to promote or support. So in this case, the hospital idea has been thrown around before in the past in the municipality. And when we were trying to get a hospital here a couple years ago, the state was, had put out their request for, the certificate of need process. And at the time, Alaska Regional was trying really hard to get that certificate of need to promote a hospital in Eagle River. And the state did not award that to Alaska Regional. Instead, they gave it to Providence, and Providence used it to expand Providence Hospital. So anyway, the need continues to be for a hospital out here, because technically anybody on the Glen Highway from the Eagle River Bridge to the Knik River Bridge could actually be without any kind of hospital resource should conditions get to the point where, you know, you can't cross the bridge. But we also consistently have people out here that have heart attacks, that are in major car accidents, that are either coming and going from Anchorage or coming and going from the Matsu Valley. And, you know, their ride to the hospital is going to be anywhere from 25 to 40 minutes. And in some cases, that life or death situation, well, it would be just that, a life or death situation. So the idea of having a hospital kind of in between, either in the Matsu Valley or downtown Anchorage, would actually be a great deal, a great value to not only the people in the Chugach Eagle River area, but to anybody basically traveling down that major transportation corridor, the Glen Highway. So anyway, so the idea would be that if the municipality could be more proactive in supporting that next effort toward getting that certificate of need for a hospital in the Eagle River Chugach area, that would really be important. It would be valuable. It would certainly be welcome, and you know, we would just be really happy to have that kind of support. So that's the reason behind the whole quality of life. You could even put that under the infrastructure component, I think, if you wanted to. Same thing with the Chugach Eagle River Community Center. We don't have one. Most other communities do. There are several in Anchorage. But, you know, again, it's a part of the community that would really appreciate that, having the support for whatever it takes to get something like that built out here. So again, if that could fall under infrastructure, it could fall under quality of life, either one. But I would hope that just because it's specifically for the Chugach Eagle River community wouldn't mean that meant it wasn't part of the concerns of the municipality versus the city of Anchorage alone. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Crystal, for sharing. And so we have a few folks in the queue. We'll start with Cameron.
Thanks. A couple items on quality of life. Just a few wonders. Wonder if it's supporting schools. So I guess supporting schools is fine, but it's very, you know, addressing the learning loss from the pandemic seems very specific. And I wonder, that's something that I'm definitely interested in, but I'm also interested in closing the achievement gap. And so I wonder if we could add that with learning loss from the pandemic and the achievement gap. The reason I say that is because, you know, the addressing the learning loss is as everyone knows, essentially is that, you know, that kids fell behind academically due to, you know, what happened through the pandemic. But in our school district, we have particular students and particular schools that are achieving at much lower rates than other students. And so by using the achievement gap, that's essentially, you know, focusing on raising academic performance in the district as a whole. So anyway, that's a term we may think about using, because that would keep us focused on the kids that fell behind because of the pandemic, but also just having a priority of having academic achievement for all kids in our city. So that's one thought. And then the second one is the Native Village of Eklutna piece seems overly specific, even to like an individual person. So I just wonder whether, and it takes up 3 lines, and I'm just wondering whether, and uses the word push, so which is I think odd for me. So I wonder if the goal is to, you know, to make the Eklutna River restoration a priority for Chugach Electric, period. You know, that so I mean, I guess obviously we would need to work with the Native Village of Eklutna, but it just seems like that's very wordy. And I don't know if we need to put in specifically the CEO, or because we're really just getting the organization to make that a priority. So anyway, that's just a couple of thoughts for cleanup and for language. and for ensuring that the education part of it is not too narrow, but still specific. So thanks.
Thanks, Cameron. Next, I have Pete.
Thanks, Felix. I just wanted to mention that, there's been talk about building a community center and a standalone library in Muldoon for a number of years. Those two could be combined. I've actually just spoken with someone about that recently again. And I know we have just signed a 5-year lease for the Muldoon Library here about 3 or 4 months ago. But it, in the long term, it would be better for the muni to have a standalone separate library. And if we could put that together with a community center, that would be great here in East Anchorage. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Meg?
Thanks. So I want to circle back on the point about establish a hospital in Eagle River. I thank Crystal for a little bit more clarity on where that comes from. And I'm really familiar with the certificate of need process, and that's a really onerous process. I'm wondering if the long-term goal isn't more toward establishing or supporting appropriate emergency medical response or infrastructure within Chugiak, Eagle River, and probably Girdwood as well, because I do agree. And there are some services short of a hospital. You can now do like a standalone emergency room, which does up to 23-hour care within the ability to transfer to a local hospital, whether that would be Matsu Regional or Alaska Regional or Prov. So I think there might be some middle ground there, and probably a more obtainable goal for us to try to work with the healthcare providers to figure out how to kind of thread that needle so that we can get to the intent, but it might fall short of a full-blown hospital. Thanks.
Thanks. And I'm sorry, could you repeat your suggested change if you had one in there?
Yeah, support establishment of, what did I say? I said it best the first time, but establishment of adequate or emergency medical infrastructure, something along those lines. If I come up with something better, I'll email it as I think about it here for a few more minutes.
Got it. Thanks. John?
Yeah, thanks. A couple of points. One, because Meg brought it up on the emergency response. Girdwood has a pretty good emergency response if it's fully funded. It actually hasn't been in my time in office, but we were close this year, but it's still 125,000 short of kind of even a low level of reimbursement for their EMT. But, they do have a very advanced volunteer fire department down there, just like Chugiak, Eagle River does. And but it would help if it were funded at the level we agreed to. And the hospital thing, it's something I've actually thought about for many years. Our dynamic here is we have so much hospital resources right in that Providence campus, and we've got regional, but that seems to be somewhat ignored and considered second fiddle. And a real justification given for the Burgaw extension is so that people can get to Providence more easily. And, maybe that's what you need to do, but it seems to me more sensible to have, we probably met all we need right there at Providence, and could use some more hospital resources elsewhere. No matter how many roads you have, it's still distance is what matters. And, either enhanced regional, so they're not considered.
Hey, John, I'm gonna stop you really quick.
Sure.
So you just started getting really muffly. So I don't know if you could change your mic.
Is that better now?
You're still muffled a little bit, but it's a little better.
Okay, well, yeah, I'll try. Sorry, let's get it. So, at any rate, So I think diversifying the locations of our, hospital resources would be good in Anchorage and more secure. So Eagle River would be fine. But, I also think as far as the size of the operation, Providence just opened up in the old REI building in Spenard a clinic. And I haven't been in there to see how extensive it is, but that's a really big building. It's not like a 24-hour emergency thing that they have there. But that might be something on the scale that Eagle River would be looking for. But I don't know, maybe Crystal could go do a field trip there and see. But, but that kind of thing, I would like to see more hospital resources in more places in Anchorage. And one other point on where the discussion on Clutha River, and I saw some proposed wording advocate for restoration of Clutha River, and we know if we don't say daylighting Fish Creek, we're going to get some grief. So consider that. Thanks.
Thanks, John. All right, next I have Crystal.
Oh, thanks, Felix. Actually, Cameron pretty much covered what I wanted to say too. I thought that the idea of trying to push the Chugach Electric CEO was kind of strong language. So if we could shorten that to something that just says work with the native village of Clutha to promote the Eagle River restoration will probably be good. So anyway, and then I don't know if I need to say anything more about the hospital idea, but obviously we all know that hospitals can be there can be a range of services and a hospital can be a range of size in terms of its facility. But again, just to have that capability where somebody can get that immediate attention that's really above and beyond what a paramedic or an EMT can do is what the community is looking for. So thanks.
Thanks. All right, and then Austin, you had a comment? If you wanted to read that or speak to it, please. And you're on mute right now. All right, I guess not hearing Austin, I'll just go ahead and read it. So Austin put in a suggestion in the chat for wording, quote, advocate for restoration of the Clutha River, end quote, something more simple like that. I agree, take CEO and Chugach out. All right, any other thoughts on quality of life before we move on to our last section? All right, not hearing any, no problem, Austin. We'll go ahead and move on to infrastructure. So go ahead, pause for a second.
I have one thought, which is just that the word obtainment, I think, is a little clunky, like receipt of federal funds or just maximize federal infrastructure funding for municipal projects.
Thanks. Any other thoughts on this section?
Felix, Suzanne here.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
And I can't remember if we talked about this before. I mean, do we need to have anything about the port on here? I know it says municipal projects, but I don't know if specifically mentioning it is important. What people think.
What would you suggest if we were to add a line here mentioning the port?
I did put it in the economic development section, so I could move it or have it twice.
Let's see. Oh yeah, I see that now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess I'm doodling on it.
I would suggest that we would move it, just putting my suggestion out there, because I think most people are going to have an instinctual reaction like Suzanne just did, which is if we're going to have a list of goals for infrastructure, then the port better be on that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Is it listed as a priority?
No, it's just listed as a goal area under economic development. And the specific listing is securing funding for the port. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go through the queue, starting with John.
Yeah, thanks. Couple thoughts. One is where we say, I think you're on investment, right? Or infrastructure.
Yeah.
Change the word roads to transportation. Roads is so limiting, and there's just a lot more to. And then, the port. I would like to see the port here, and you might put, like, leave it in the economic development as well, but here call it not just the port, but the Port of Alaska Modernization Program, which I think if Chris is here, he could verify. I mean, that's still the right phrasing for the plan forward. Is that right?
And Chris dropped off, but I think that's correct, John.
Thank you. Anything else, John?
A little bit. This is all. Sorry to be so fine tuning. You use new AMAT scoring system too. It's really for prioritizing more than promote.
John, do you understand what the "and encourage density" phrase means at the end of that bullet?
Well, I'm pondering that as I look right now. It's not so much that the scoring system would encourage that, but all of these things, maybe encourage is the wrong word, but it makes density work better. So it's not to encourage it, it's just to allow, I would say, more efficient land use would probably be, it's a little wonkish, but that's more what we're about.
Okay, thanks, John. Next I have Crystal.
Oh, thanks, Felix. Actually, you kind of asked my question as well, and it was about that idea of encouraging density, because we have zoning for a reason, and in some places we're not really encouraging density. We're protecting low density. So anyway, if we could do something with that maybe better reflects the real motivation and goal there, I think that would be better. So I do appreciate John's suggestion of saying more efficient land use. That might better characterize it. So thanks.
Thanks. Austin made a comment, I think, in agreement that the port should be moved to infrastructure. So next I'll go to Meg.
Thanks. So I agree that density is the wrong word. I was wondering more about and encourage connectivity might be a word based on promoting pedestrian, bike, and trail improvements. And I don't know. That's how I read that. We don't want just disparate AMATS projects around. And then I thought that, and I had to step out for a minute. So if you already covered this, just tell me and I'll live with it. But maximize obtainment of federal infrastructure funds sounds weird.
Yeah, Austin caught on that too. So the new verbiage based on Austin's suggestion was maximize federal infrastructure funding.
Okay, that's awesome. And then the last, I don't know if anyone said it, reopen Sullivan Arena as a sporting event sporting and event venue as infrastructure doesn't seem like infrastructure to me. It seems like quality of life. And I understand our quality of life is like already pressing the margin. So I'm not like making a stand on it, but it doesn't seem like the kind of things we're talking about for infrastructure. I mean, infrastructure to me is much more like, I mean, I understand it's a part of the city's infrastructure, but we're not suggesting doing anything with it other than opening its use, which I feel is more tied to quality of life.
Got it. Thanks, Meg. John?
Yeah, looking at that a little more, the scoring system isn't just ped, bike, and trail, but it's promote or prioritize all transportation projects. In fact, one of the changes was everything gets thrown into the same scoring system instead of two separate. So use new AMAT scoring system to prioritize transportation projects, including pedestrian, bike, and trail improvements. And you could scratch the whole land use thing. You could. I mean, ultimately, that's what our transportation system needs to do is, efficient land use. I mean, I don't want to end up writing a sentence that's as long as an essay, though. But it should include more. It's not just, the scoring system's not just non-motorized.
Thanks, John. Pete, I see you're trying to get in the queue.
Thanks, Felix. I was just thinking, doing a little wordsmithing in my mind, was thinking about, instead of encourage density, help plan for density. Just an idea. Just do it up. Thanks.
Thanks. Right. Okay. Cameron, I see you're trying to get in the queue. Do you want to put that on the record, Cameron? All right.
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay.
Can we
all right.
get into the document?
Oh, that's interesting. So it looks like our interpreter has their hand raised. So go ahead.
Apologies, that was an error.
Okay. No problem. All right. Any other thoughts before we
Felix.
move on? Sorry, who was
I
that?
was just gonna, it's Austin. Sorry, I
Oh.
was just gonna say if any members of the public are listening, Cameron just made a pun, like a play on words. It was not anything that interesting. Since there were a lot of us laughing, I didn't want people to think it was something more substantive.
Thanks. Good clarification for the record. Okay, so I'm not hearing anything else, so we'll go ahead and move on to priorities. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start sharing my screen. So Claire, if you can take yours down.
Okay.
And then we'll do priorities, and then we'll go over the edits as I have heard them and get your thoughts on them. So, and Suzanne, I'm going to ask you to help with the queue since I no longer have access to that since I've shared my screen. Okay, so there are two priorities that I have heard throughout this conversation and the conversation we had in January. So the January one was around the FEMA reimbursement and making sure the municipalities' reserve funds are intact or building them up to pre-COVID, I guess, levels. So that was one priority. And I don't know if those were meant to be sort of the same priority, sort of lumped into one, or if those were meant to be two. I believe it was you, John, that brought that up. Second one that I heard today was around communication. And then a third one that sort of heard mentioned but never really formalized was the idea of possibly the ports of Alaska being some type of priority. So those are what I have on the table so far. Again, I guess just to, our goals are sort of somewhat tangible items, or at least hopefully tangible items that we can really move forward on and say at the end of the year, we did this to achieve this goal, versus I think priorities tend to be more, I think, overarching, and they tend to not necessarily fit in any one particular area that we have established here in this document. So that's sort of how I have envisioned using the term priorities. So with that, I'll open it up to thoughts that folks have. I guess first, do we want to set up priorities? Is that something important for us? And if the answer to that is yes, then what should those look like?
And Meg is first in the queue.
Yes, thank you. So maybe others won't feel this way about the port priority. I think the port priority should be on there, and I think it should be fairly specific. I believe in a pretty rapid timeline for trying to move the port along. And so I don't know if we're willing to go as far as to say, somehow having it positioned for the summer 2024 construction season. Obviously, we would, if we started to think about a priority around a date specific, we could test that theory in the Enterprise and Utilities Oversight Committee, and then refine it before we publish this. But I like the idea of some kind of a date specific, especially since we're making this large legislative push, but then putting it in the context of how long it takes to move from asking for money and working through the design into a construction period. Thanks.
Did I encapsulate that correctly, Meg, on the screen?
2024 though, not 2022. I mean, I love
I like
this.
your big goals, Felix. He's gonna get out there and start working on it himself.
Thanks, Felix.
John is next.
Yeah, that was good. I would put the port at the top, at least in line with the mayor for sure. And then, just, homelessness, and I think maybe Ben can help craft some proper word there, but, that's been a priority, and we've clearly dove in big time, and it's going to happen. And we've shown that it's a priority. And then always public safety needs to be in there. And generally people think police and fire, public safety, but if we can maybe figure out some wording that ties in, some of the broader things of public safety, like the mental health, first responders, crisis now, things like that, that those are really just as much public safety as, direct what we think of as typical police action and fire. But those three should be, I think, right at the top.
And Austin had put in the queue public health and safety.
Another thing in here somewhere too is workforce development. If we put in, getting federal money for infrastructure, who the heck's going to do the work?
Okay, so I'm going to have you repeat that in a second, but first, Suzanne, can you repeat what Austin put in the chat, please?
She had said public health and safety. And then after you're done, Felix, Cameron will be next.
Great. Go ahead, John, if you could repeat the second thing you said.
Public safety, mental health, first responders,
You would talk about
homelessness.
infrastructure.
Workforce. Who's going to do the work?
There's a lot of priorities. Okay. Thanks.
Sorry, just one last component in that public safety, is and ties to this workforce thing is, we're having trouble recruiting. We're going to be the academies are half size just because of hard recruiting, the police academies recently. So, with public safety, it's not just maintain funding like we built up the funding. Now it's like we don't have the bodies to spend it on. So that's a lot of words for this, but hold in your heads. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay. Suzanne, I think you said Cameron was next.
Yep.
Yeah, I am challenged by the the level of specificity in this in terms of what it should be and shouldn't be. I mean, we already have the pillars, and so things like public safety and public health and stuff like that. I mean, I think that for me, the port is certainly a major priority. Economic recovery is a major priority, and I think what's happening in our public education system is a major priority. And I think the one thing we've been talking about a lot is early childhood education, and we've identified funding for that, but that's just an incredibly important investment. So I'm just thinking about really those, like, over the next year, what are the things that are top of mind for people? What are those things that are really important? And I think for me, it's as I said, I think better communication to and from the public is a major one. I think the port is a major one. I think that economic recovery and education are there. I think those are the major ones for me. And I think that public safety is always a priority, and it's already one of our pillars. So anyway, that's my sort of thoughts on this piece. I think there's some value in not being too broad, like just saying economic development. I think having specifically what that means. But those are the areas that are priority, and I think that the only other one that I would say that feels like a really big priority is that fits into public safety and public health and all of that is absolutely crisis now. Like, that is, I think it's a system that over the next year has to have a lot of attention and has to have a lot of support from us as a body if it's really going to move forward and fulfill what we have hoped it to be. So those are my thoughts on that. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Cameron. Anyone else, Suzanne?
I don't see anyone else in the queue, Felix.
All right.
I'm sorry, I didn't put my name in the queue, Felix. Can I?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Thanks. I don't have anything. I don't think I have any other topics to add to the list, but I think there's just some expansion on some of those things. I do believe that, for me, it's checking out the municipalities, or it's monitoring our negative fund balance and really looking at the overall financial health of the district right now as we move forward. And I do think that we have things to consider in projects that we would be bonding for in terms of the costs of those projects. So part of what John said in terms of workforce development, we just had the Chugach Eagle River Chamber of Commerce had John Bittner from the Small Business Development Center give us a briefing kind of on what's happening with employment trends, who's sticking around, who's not, what it costs to hire an employee right now. And all of those costs are going up. So I just want to make sure that, as in terms of our economic recovery and how that relates to workforce development and how that relates to the municipality's overall funding sources, I think are all things to just kind of keep in mind. We really are in a fairly volatile situation right now because we don't know how things are going to play out. There's a great deal of concern right now about having the employees available to fill the positions that are needed. And the bottom line is apparently employees are not so worried about healthcare. They're not so worried about retirement benefits, but they are absolutely looking for top dollar salaries. So when we start looking at that, it just means things cost more. So anyway, kind of rolling that of all those three things kind of into one, but just recognizing that that's kind of a big picture kind of a thing that we have to keep in mind. And I think it's going to be keeping that in mind in itself will be a priority. So otherwise, yes, absolutely goes back to communicating all of that to the public. It's always an ongoing thing. And the public safety part of it, I think, is important as well. And there's so many different aspects to public safety. We worry about bridges out here. We worry about the condition of that particular infrastructure. So the infrastructure funds are really significant too, and how we make sure that we leverage those the best that we can. So anyway, I think the list we have is a good one. It's just how we expand on those, maybe bullet point some of them underneath to make sure that we hit some of the real specifics to those topics. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal.
So Cameron's in the queue, Felix, and I just want to call attention to time since we have about 8 minutes left.
Yeah, I'll be quick.
Go ahead.
I just want to say real quick that I think we should consider something that Crystal sort of said, and that is something around, looking at, our aligning ourselves in some way to the efforts the mayor is trying to make to reduce spending and being efficient, and looking at really being smart about how we use the money we have and looking at ways to become more efficient. I want to consider that, because it would be nice to be aligned with the idea that we're both prioritizing the port and we're both looking for ways to make government more efficient. So I just wanted to throw that out. I don't know what other people feel about that, but that's always something I think we're doing. I think all of us are committed to being smart with how we use the resources we have, but it's not always on our priorities. So anyway, just a thought. Thanks.
Thanks, Cameron. Okay, so just considering the time, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and then I guess I'll just walk through sort of what we're doing from here. So what I'm going to do is over the next 2 or 3 days, I will give Claire all of the edits that have been made today, and I will do my best to frame the various priorities and get those, I think, in a presentable format. And then I guess if I were to just put a hope out there, I suppose that hope would be that on well, I guess it depends on how we want to do this, but likely it'd be great if we can get everything done and ready by the meeting on March 1st so that we can have these approved. I just don't know if there's a way to do a timeline sooner than that, but I guess I will leave that up to leadership if they think there's a timeline that'll work quicker than March 1st.
I think that sounds reasonable, Felix. Suzanne here.
Okay, great. Well then, thanks so much, Claire, for all your help on this, and everyone for your thoughts. Hopefully you'll see an updated draft of this next week. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Suzanne.
Thanks, Felix. Really appreciate you taking us through this and working with Claire and updating the priorities and accomplishments and goals. So thank you so much for doing that. We have 5 minutes left. We don't have anything else under unfinished business. I guess I could ask if anyone had any other items that they had wanted to bring up under new business. And we could flag maybe for next time. Okay, we don't have anything under unfinished business. Are there any members of the public here who would like to participate? I see one number 907-360-5413. And I am not sure if that's a member of the public. If you wish to participate, you can unmute by pressing *6. I'll just pause here. Okay, I don't hear anyone or see anyone unmuting. Alrighty, well then it is 2:56, and if members don't have anything else to bring up, thank you all for participating and for joining today. And thank you for all your work on the plan. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.